Hi, I'm ready to welcome back to my booktube channel, Life Worth Reading. This video is quite late, but today I want to talk to you about my favorite books of 2022. I've actually just filmed and uploaded my video of every single book that I read in 2022, where I briefly, very briefly and harshly tell you about every single book that I read last year, but now it is time for my favorites of the year. Like I mentioned in that video, 2022 was not a great quality reading year. I didn't have a lot of new favorites, but I did manage to pick up some new ones that I really enjoyed, and I want to tell you all about them. I'm going to tell you about my top 10 favorite books of the year with some honorable mentions as well, just so you can have a lot more books to put on your TBR for next year's. And I think that's all that I gotta say, so let's get into it. For my honorable mentions, these are probably all like 4-star or 4.5-star books that I really enjoyed. This doesn't really mean that all my top 10 books are 5 stars, but they're just my favorites of the year, and sometimes they don't coincide. Sometimes you get a 4-star book that is a favorite, and sometimes you get a 5-star book that's not a favorite. So those are not mutually exclusive, but I want to tell you about some honorable mentions that I did have last year. The first one is The Stationery Shop by Miriam Kamali. Then we have They Never Learn by Lynn Fargo. Then we have Stay With Me by Ayobami Adebayo. The Silence of Girls by Pat Barker. And The Thursday Murder Club and The Man Who Died Twice by Richard Osman. Those are all the books that I really enjoyed that didn't make it onto my top 10. And now, without further ado, let's just get into my top 10 favorite books of 2022. In my number 10 spot, we have Optic Nerve by Maria Gaínza. This is an Argentinian author, if I'm not mistaken. I picked this up from my library randomly. I just saw the cover and I thought it was very intriguing. And it is actually a very confusing book in terms of genre. It's not a biography, but it feels like it is because it is narrated in the first person, and it's confusing, but it's also a breath of fresh air in terms of a fiction book. It is a short one, and it intertwines fiction with real life history of painters and artists and art, and it's just an incredibly informative and very rich original book. It was something that I've never read before, and so you are reading from this unnamed narrator who narrates in first person, and you see like little vignettes of their life intertwined and mixed in with biographies of painters and episodes from painters' lives, and you learn a lot more about art and about certain paintings, especially South American painters, which I didn't know a lot about. And it was just it stayed with me. I ended up giving it 4 stars. I didn't give it a 5, but it ended up staying with me because it was very original. It was something that I've never read before. The writing was simple yet very rich, and it just let me know about a lot more about art and culture that I didn't know before. And I always value when a book teaches you something, and it was structured in such a way that I have yet to see in other books. And if you like art, if you like paintings, if you like little vignettes of people's lives, then you will really enjoy this one, and I definitely recommend it, and that's why it's in my favorite books of 2022. For number 9, we have Read at the Bone by Jacqueline Woodson. This is a book that I had been wanting to read for the last couple of years, and I finally bought it in 2022, and I finally read it. It's a very short book. It's under 200 pages. I do want to reread it this year and annotate it a little bit because I didn't do that, but it's about the story of this family. It starts in Brooklyn in 2001 when a girl falls pregnant, a 16-year-old girl falls pregnant, and then you follow the story of her family, Melody's story, and you go way back to different states and different times, and it's just a beautiful intergenerational story that really delivered on the poetic writing and just beautiful writing that I was expecting out of this book and that everyone talks about. And it was very, I don't know how to explain it. It was very simple as well, but it was very poetic and it was very beautiful, and it really teaches you something about family and about family values, and also just about everything: race, life, culture, family, friendships, and it is just a mixture of everything that I usually love in a literary or a contemporary book like this, and it just really delivered on all of my expectations. I ended up giving it 5 stars, and I definitely want to reread it this year and annotate the hell out of it. Number 8 on my list, we have Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. This is a book that I read late into the year. I think I read this in October. My boyfriend gifted me this copy, which is absolutely gorgeous, and I ended up reading it right away because the hype was very high for this book. It is a book that was talked about a lot this year, and I think it deserved all the hype. Again, this wasn't a 5-star, I think it was a 4 point something, but I just ended up really enjoying this book a lot more than I thought, because sometimes you have books that just construct characters in a way that is so realistic, that is so specific, and that is so detailed that you can't help but be engrossed in the story and just be living through these characters. I wholly believed that there were real people out there, which really made this book something special in my eyes. The story was fresh, it was original. Towards the end, some things happened that I didn't particularly like, but in terms of plot, but in terms of it being a love story without it being a love story, I thought it was amazing. I thought it depicted video games in a way that was understandable for a lot of people. A lot of people might not find it interesting. I personally did. And it was just something that I want to see more of. I want to see if you have any recommendations of books that feel like this. And what I mean by the characters feeling so realistic and you're just reading so much detail of their lives. I want more of that because I really enjoy that in a book. And this completely delivered on that aspect. Sam and Sadie feel like real people. Max, I adored, and you really got to know them, and it just spanned for a couple of years. But I feel like the downfall of this book is that when you are so detailed throughout and you're spanning on so many years of these characters' lives, towards the end it has to be rushed, because you can't just depict 30 years in 400 pages. So towards the end it did feel a little bit rushed on parts that I think shouldn't have been rushed. But other than that, I really enjoyed this book. I think it deserves all the hype there is being had for this book at the moment, and I feel like it's worthy of its praise. And it's definitely not an all-time favorite, but a book that I really enjoyed, and that is on my favorites of last year. I didn't mean for all of my physical books to be in tandem like this, but number 7 we have Love After Love by Ingrid Persaud. Also one of the last books that I read last year. It was a book that I had put on many TBRs before because I had bought this book secondhand a while ago, and I'm so glad that I finally read it. This was a gorgeous book. The writing is like nothing I've ever read before. It's set in the Caribbean, and it just has all of that Caribbean style to it, and just the way that the conversations flow, the way that the writing is very oral, it flows so nicely, and it's so impressive to read a whole book that's like this. When you get into it, you never stopped being into it, and it's just an incredible book. It's about our main character Solo and his mother, whose husband and his father dies when he's 5 years old, and he was very abusive towards the child and the mother. And then they grew up being the best of friends, the mother and the son. And then the son finds something out when he's a little bit older, and he moves away. And it's just a very heartbreaking story of family. At times it was very frustrating, but because of the characters' actions, not because of the book itself. And the plot was, God, it was heartbreaking, but I really loved this book, and I'm so glad that I own it. I'm so glad that I finally have it, and I would recommend this book to anyone because it is just a beautiful story about family and about values and about just love, I feel like. For my number 6 spot, we have When No One Is Watching by Alyssa. This is a book that I went in with a little bit of low expectations because there was a lot of people that didn't particularly like this book, and I totally understand because this book is a thriller, and thrillers are very hit or miss for most people, and also the thriller involves a little bit of a romance, so that's even more hit or miss. So I went into this with lower expectations that I usually I do with every single thriller that I encounter, but this was an incredible thriller and just an incredible book overall. It is about the gentrification of Brooklyn and what people are capable of in order to how do I say this? It's very racially charged, and in a good way, because it is about gentrification, and it just really dives deep into that aspect through a lens that is unusual. It's obviously very exaggerated, it's ridiculous, it's a thriller, but the basis of it is so real, and that makes it even more frightening. You know what I mean? I loved our main character, Sydney. I didn't particularly like the romance, but I also didn't dislike it, which is big for me because I usually dislike most romances that I encounter. And the fact that I didn't dislike this means a whole lot to me, and I just really cared about this book, and it was just such a incredible audiobook as well, and just so nerve-wracking. That's what I mean. Like, it's absolutely nerve-wracking. It does remind me of Ace of Spades in a way that obviously also ridiculous in a thrillery way, but the bases of them are so real that it makes the book terrifying, and just it gives the books in this case like a whole other light that other thrillers might not have. And I just really liked it. I think Alyssa Cole did an amazing job with this book. I know she also writes romance, but I will probably not be reading those. But this book I really enjoyed, and I think that if you're looking for a thriller that is scary, it's outrageous, it's nerve-wracking, it's stressful, and it's also very real, I think that you should definitely read this one because it's well worth the listen or reading. I prefer the audiobook, but anyway you want to consume this story, I think it'll be great. Number 5. Speaking of a ridiculous mystery, cozy mystery, I read Finlay, Donovan is Killing It by Elle Cosimano, and I really enjoyed it. I thought this was as silly and as outrageous and as cozy and fun as everyone says that it is. This is another book that I gave 4 stars, but just I had so much fun reading it that it just really stuck with me through the rest of the year. And looking back, I can remember the fun that I had reading this book. It is also outrageous. Everyone knows the premise already. It's about a single mom, a writer, that is paid $50,000 to kill a man to perform a hit for this other woman, and she just entangles in so many outrageously ridiculous things. But you will have so much fun with this book, like that is guaranteed. If you go into it knowing it'll be kind of silly, and if you know that it's going to be one of those that is just a good, like a feel-good book, then you will have the most fun with it. I will say that the sequel was very disappointing. I did not care for Finlay, Donovan Knocks Him Dead. I thought it was messy. I thought it was not as entertaining as the first one, and I am very nervous about the third one that's coming out at the end of January, because if it continues on the same vibes as the second one, that this trilogy is lost for me. But this first one, really fun. If you're looking for a cozy mystery and a feel-good book, I definitely recommend this one. Number 4 on my list, we have the memoir Crying in hmart by Michelle Zauner. Also, there's not a lot that could be said about this book that people haven't said already. I listened to the audiobook, and it was one of the most incredible audiobook experiences I've ever had. It was incredibly memorable, incredibly heartfelt. I can still hear some parts of it that really stuck with me throughout the year, and I think that I read this in January or February, so about a year ago now, and I can still remember some parts of it vividly. It was a very emotional experience. Trigger warnings for death of parent, for terminal illnesses, for just a lot of heavy things, but this memoir really underlined the importance of family, of love, of culture, and sometimes the complicated relationships that we have with our parents. And it was very, very emotional, but I really loved it, and it really kicked off my year with memoirs, and it just really stuck with me. And I think that it's a memoir that everyone should read if you're interested in culture, in being a Korean immigrant in America, in family, in the loss of that family and the roots that we have and the way that we connect with our own culture and our own identity, then I definitely recommend this book, especially the audiobook. It is absolutely incredible, and I really admire Michelle Zauner for putting herself out there with this book, because it is something that not a lot of people could do, you know? Not a lot of people would have the courage to be so upfront about their failures, about their feelings, about their problems in their life. And it was just an honor to be able to listen to her experiences. For my number 3 spot, we also have a memoir, because we love a good memoir, and this one is Hola, Papi, How to Come Out in a Walmart Parking Lot and Other Stories by John Paul Braummer. I had previously no idea who John Paul Braummer was, but listen, I will be his best friend if he wants me to. I love this man. I adore this man. This was one of the most fun memoirs I've ever read. It was so well structured. It's structured in essays, in essay form, in terms of he has a column where people can ask questions, and by answering the question, he's telling you about an event or an experience or an episode of his life. And it was just so much fun. It's also about culture, but it's mostly about sexuality and how to come to terms with your sexuality and how to come to terms with yourself. There's a lot that will make you laugh. There's a lot that will make you tear up. And I just really, it's one of the only memoirs that I've ever considered like rereading, like re-listening to the audiobook, because I had just had such a good time listening to this one. I really also admire John Paul Braummer for putting himself out there and for writing something so personal and that so many other people can identify with. And I just had such a great time with this one. I really, really loved it, and I'm so glad that I decided to listen to it. Number 2, we have a book that honestly kind of changed my life. I'm not gonna lie, because I'm usually not a series person. I'm not someone that really gets attached to series anymore. I had a phase there when I was younger, but I'm not usually the type of person that reads a lot of series and that gets really attached to them. But this book changed that. And that is The Strange Case of the Alchemist's Daughter by Theodore Goss. I want to thank Meg with Books. Megan, you will not see this because you are not subscribed to me, but I want to thank you personally for always screaming about these books, because the Athena Club, it does have my heart. It really does. Probably if I had finished the series in time, it would have been all on this list, but I've only read the first and second one. The third one I have yet to read, and that's why this is the only one that's on here. But I had such a good time with this book. Listen, this will not be for everyone. The writing style of this, not really the writing style itself, but the way that it's presented. We have one of the characters, Catherine, that is writing a book about their adventures, and therefore there are a lot of instances where they interrupt each other, where they talk over each other. And I feel like in audiobook that may be a little bit confusing, but in writing form it is very simple. You see, like, you have the story and then you have people talking, and I just really like that. I didn't mind it at all. It never got old for me, but I understand that a lot of people don't like this. But I just had such a good time. This is about a group, like a found family of girls that are related or somehow in relationship with a lot of fictional characters like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Frankenstein, Dr. Moreau, and it's just, we have Sherlock and Holmes appearing on this book, and it's set in Victorian London. It's everything I could want out of a mystery, out of a found family. I love these characters. I love the mystery of the first one. I had such a good time reading this book, and I was so attached to these characters. The second one is almost 800 pages long, and somehow I still ate it up. This was a 5-star, but the second one was a 4-star because it wasn't as good as this one. But I love this character so much that, yeah, like, I read 800 pages and I was like, I could read more. Honestly, like, give me a 1,000-page book about these characters on adventures through the 18th century or 19th century Europe, and I will eat it up. So this book changed my life. Thank you. I'm so excited and nervous to read the last one, but just give it a try. Maybe it won't be for you because of that writing aspect. I definitely recommend reading it physically or ebook form and not audiobook, because I feel like that could get confusing. But I definitely recommend you try it. and just see what you think of it, because if you do like it, there's a lot to gain out of this book. And finally, we are on to my favorite book of the year. Honestly, this one could have been it, but I decided to pick Elena Knows by Claudia Piñero. This is a book that was shortlisted for the Booker Prize, and oh my god, did it deserve to win. I actually didn't read any of the other ones, but this one deserved to win. You heard it here first. This book was incredible. Okay, this book was incredible. It is not a good time. It is not a feel-good book. It'll make you feel things that maybe you wish you wouldn't feel, but it's so important. It's about a woman called Elena, and this is I think she's an author from either Argentina or Peru. I can't remember right now. I'll put it in the video. But it was about our main character Elena, who suffers from a very rare and advanced form of Parkinson, and whose daughter Rita actually commits suicide, and she is now all alone in the world. She was her caretaker, and it's just a story. It's 200 pages, 200 something pages. It's a short read, but it packs a punch. It is about how lonely and desperate Elena is to find out the truth, because she doesn't think that her daughter killed herself, but nobody else believes her. And she is just running around looking for answers about her daughter. And they are very profoundly flawed characters. You see a lot of their relationship. And again, it's a very complicated mother and daughter relationship. But you can just see the care that Elena has for her daughter. And God, it was a lot. Like, in terms of chronic illness, in terms of just sadness and difficulties, but it is well worth the read. The writing style is so original, so fresh, nothing like I've ever read before, and it was just incredible. I feel like it deserves every award out there, and it's very underrated, even though it was shortlisted, but it's very underrated, and I think that more people should read it, because it does a lot for such a short book, and it was my favorite read of the year. Okay, so those are my top 10 favorite books, with a couple of honorable mentions here and there of my favorite books of 2022. I had such a great time reading last year. It could have been better, but I'm very glad for the books that I did read, the books that I did love, and that I get to share them with you. And let me know if you've read any of these books, if you liked any of these books, if you've come out of this video with any new recommendations that you would like to follow. And my worst books of 2022 video is also coming out soon, but today was just a day of positivity, of just feel good and just bragging about all the great books that I read last year, and I hope that you did enjoy. As always, if you did enjoy this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more bookish content, and I'll see you in my next video. I hope you have a nice day, and always remember that life is worth reading.